Hello and welcome. My name is Lewis from setupvolleyball.com, and today I'm going to be going over the 4-2 rotations for the serving team. If you're after the 4-2 rotations when you're in serve receive, look on my channel for that video. Or alternatively, if you look at the top right now, you should see a little ribbon coming across the screen. If you like the video and you think it's useful, please do give it a thumbs up and share it with anybody that you think it may be useful to. And besides from that, if you enjoy this sort of content, please do consider subscribing, as we're going to be dropping lots of videos exactly like this one, so you can be sure to get all your volleyball needs right here.
So today we're going to be going over the 4-2 formation, but more specifically the 4-2 serving rotations. So just if you are completely new to the 4-2 formation, I will go over the basics of what it is, why we use it, and then I will go into detail a bit more about the actual rotations for when we are the serving team. So the 4-2 volleyball rotations, or the 4-2 volleyball formation, it's a formation that's primarily used at beginner levels or lower levels due to the simplicity of the rotations, and there is a few other advantages which I'll go into in a minute. So just to clarify, the 4 and the 2 in the formation mean that there is 4 hitters on the court and 2 setters on the court at any one time. So hence why it's called the 4-2 volleyball formation. So some of the advantages are the easy rotations that I previously mentioned. There's actually only 3 rotations in the 4-2 formation, so that makes it lovely to learn as a beginner. It makes decision making for the setters much better because there's only 2 possible options. I mean, there are more, but for the most part, you're only going to set the 2 front court players that are at the front of the net with your setter. You can put more passes in the serve receive if you need to, so you can have up to 5 passes in that serve receive. I mentioned in the serve receive video that although you can, I personally don't like to do this because when you're trying to pass out of a cluster back line, it can be quite confusing. And it leaves a lot of guesswork as to who's trying to take the ball, who's not. And when you're lower level or beginner, that isn't something that you need to be concerned about. And the last point is it's a good introduction to teaching players more complicated rotations. So when they understand sort of how they rotate and why they rotate, then it becomes a lot easier to teach them other rotations in different formations. So before we get into the 4-2 rotation, people always say that it's difficult to know the rotations, which I said it in the serve receive video and I'll say it again, I actually disagree with, because I don't think rotating to a position is difficult. I think knowing where you stand at the start of the rally to then how you rotate is the difficult part, because ultimately there is only 2 positions that you need to be concerned about when you're on a volleyball court, and that is the position that you play when you're front row and the position that you play when you are back row. Back row and front row being in front of the 3 meter or 10-foot line or behind the 3 meter or 10-foot line. So the thing that I think is confusing is knowing where to stand at the start of that rally, not particularly how to rotate into the same position that you go into every time. So with that being said, this is a simple sort of lineup sheet that you would see. This is basically what a coach would have to submit before every single set starts, which basically indicates where each player on the team is positioned. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they indicate zones on the volleyball court. So your setter is in zone 1 or position 1. So if you ever hear someone say position 5, position 1, you can now relate to what these are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The only thing that is a little bit confusing is that when you rotate in volleyball, you rotate clockwise, whereas the positions sort of go the opposite direction. So just bear that in mind. I suppose if you look at it from a countdown point of view, then they don't. So, but that's just one thing to keep an eye out for. So if we were going to line up like this is our first rotation here. So this is how we're going to start when we step on the court. If we are the serving team, this would be our positions on court. So if we have our setter starting the service, obviously you always have your positions opposite. So if your setter is serving, your other setter will be left forward or position 4, and your middles are opposite each other, outside hitters or wing hitters are again opposite each other. So if this is our first lineup, we'll move on to the next slide. You can see that what we would probably want to do in this situation is this is how we would want to stack, because what we want to happen is our setter here, we always want to try and get him to set from position 2, him or her I should say, Um, so we always want them to be at position 2 when setting the ball, and then obviously we want our middle at the front of the net in the middle, and our outside over here ready to go. So this is completely personal preference, but many people teach having the middle as the back court deep player in the middle here. Personally, I like to have the outside player. The only reason that I say this is generally the outside player is a stronger hitter. So by having them back court middle, if the pass isn't very good when we do rotate into these positions, say the pass goes to here, the setter can just put up a nice simple ball into the middle here, and this outside player can still come through and hit a good shot from the backcourt. Whereas it's not very common to set all the way over here, so I prefer to have the outside backcourt in the middle. So based on that, I have put them in the middle in each of these rotations. So if this is how we're going to stack, we are serving here. Our number one setter is serving. So the second he serves the ball, these players can move. So once he serves the ball, our outside player is going to go to position 4 and get ready to block, and our setter is going to go to position 2 and also get ready to block. The middle is going to stay where he is because he's already in the right place. So, and in the back court, all the middle is going to do is just slide round to this left position here so that they end up in these base positions, which are these. These base positions will always be the same, providing you are playing in these positions, i.e. you have your middle going to position 5 and you have your outside at 6. Obviously, if you don't have that and the middle is the person who is at 6, then just swap these two players around. But if in doubt, just double check with your coach. So moving on to the next position. So we've lost a point and we've won the point back, so we are now back to serving. So everybody on the team is going to rotate one position in a clockwise direction. So as I said, if you had your setter originally at position 1, they have moved clockwise to 6, and the middle who was at 6 has moved to 5. So this would be the positions on the court, and this would be how we would want to stack. So again, we want our setter to be able to get to a setting position at 2, although obviously to begin with he will be blocking, not setting. But we want our setter to be able to get to 2. And our middle is already in position 5. So all we're going to do is push the setter that was at 6 into this one position up here to the base position. So all the outside has to do is just walk into the middle here, as you can see from here. So again, the setter is going to stack with this middle player here. The setter is going to step to the right of the middle, get on the net. The middle is going to just shift over slightly into this middle and then wait for the set so they can go either left or right. And the outside is going to step onto the court and into this deep 6 position here. And that's all there is to it. So only 2 players have got to move, and technically the outside could just serve in the middle and just step on court naturally. So probably the easier one of the rotations. So moving on to the next one. So again, we've lost a point, we've won it back, we have all rotated one position clockwise. So the setter that last rotation was at 6, it's now at 5, and so forth. So on this particular one, the setter is already in the right spot at position 2, and the middle and the outside are the wrong way around. So what we would want to do is this outside is going to stack with this middle here. So the middle is going to try and get as close to the middle front of the court as they can, and the outside is going to tuck in just behind them here. What I didn't touch on was these backcourt players here. So obviously the setter wants to go to this one position here. Obviously he's not actually a setter in this situation, but he is the setter when he moves around. So he's going to just be a defender in the one position. The outside can stay deep 6. Obviously, I've put the middle is going to do this really long rotation here. In reality, if the middle was playing 5 and they felt comfortable, they would probably just serve from this position here and just walk on court. Otherwise, it's a lot of running unnecessarily. So again, we want the outside to go to the 4 position, the middle to step right to the middle, and the setter to be at the 2 position, all ready to block. And then our defenders will adopt these base positions. Overall, I don't think the rotations for when you're the serving side are too difficult, because ultimately it's just about trying to make your job as easy as possible. So if you're out of position, you just want to try and push your players over as close as you can to your position without putting them sort of out of their position. It's probably a bit of a disjointed way of explaining it, but hopefully you get a feel for these rotations now. They're pretty simple. Like I say, you're just trying to limit the amount of running that everybody has to do and make sure that they can be in their positions and set up so that nobody gets caught off guard. They're all the rotations that you need to know. So you now have the serving rotations as well as the serve-receive rotations. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't got a helpful guide for these as of yet, like I do for the serve-receive rotations. But if it's something that you guys would want and would want to take with you to like a practice, so you could really start implementing these, let me know because I've got obviously all of these printouts, so it is easy enough for me to throw them all together. So just let me know and I can do that for you. Okay, thank you very much, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.